Hello, welcome to another edition of the Seth and Gentry Show. We're here to talk about spring practice. Spring practice is over. I'm not sure why I'm applauding.
Our presence was requested actually on the junkyards.
Yes, there are a lot of the masses out there really want to hear what we have to say about spring practice, and here we are. I'm going to first off introduce us for those of you who are not our mothers and actually or have not seen the show before. I'm Seth Emerson with the Macon Telegraph and the Columbus Ledger Inquirer, and this is
Gentry Estes, Dogs 24/7, in my unshaven late spring attire.
Not wearing your 24/7.
Yeah, I know, it's a little different. Yeah. We're like say U.S. soccer.
Yeah,
with the little World Cup tees.
We're allowed to do that. I mean, as reporters, we're not supposed to root for our teams we cover or anybody in college. You've got to be careful about your pro teams, but everyone roots for the U.S., right?
Tell you what, if somebody wanted to send me to Brazil to cover the World Cup, I would be more than happy to give them this hat.
All right, you know what? You lobby for a new job on your own time. This is a dogs show. Gentry, spring practice is over. That wasn't a rough edit, by the way. That was me immediately segueing.
Even though I know you want us to keep talking about soccer,
yeah.
That was probably...
Gentry, what was your main one or two takeaways from Georgia spring practice?
First off, I think the defense still has a lot of work to do. I think anybody coming into this spring, if they were looking for any solid answers out of the defense, they probably weren't going to get very many, and you didn't. Otherwise, I think Hudson Mason's clearly the #1 quarterback. You kind of expect that, but I think G-Day solidified that for him. And Todd Gurley's still real good. O-line still maybe doesn't have their 5 yet, and I think that that's it's kind of overshadowed by the defense just because that was kind of the story. I think you could talk about Hudson Mason, but I still think that the defense was kind of the deal.
I think we'll spend most of the time on the defense. We'll just kind of dispense with offensive stuff right now. I think with the O-line, that's going to, Greg Pike getting a job, John Theus, Colton Houston, period of lockdown tackle spots, David Andrews. I think we'll go into the fall still kind of wondering about a spot or two, and they've got to do it in the season.
I will say that the incoming freshmen in that group could have a shot.
Yeah.
I think it would have said that going into spring on the O-line. I think we'd still say that.
I think also they need to get a lot of these skill position guys back. Obviously, Malcolm Mitchell's back. That changes a lot.
Yeah, the offense still had a lot of guys hurt. I mean, it was really the same team that you saw at the end of the season in a lot of cases.
Jay Rome, Jordan Davis at tight end. And you know what? I'm not going to get into the whole who should be the #2 guy for Tone Boucher or Bryce Ramsey, because I suspect we're going to be discussing that a lot over the next year, 2 years, whatever. So that can be a whole different Seth and Gentry show. We can't start if we start on that.
That's true.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty of time for that, because neither of them is the #1 right now. It's Hudson Mason, who frankly, I think coming into the spring, and I'm one of those who I'm very careful about how much I look into the spring. But I think coming into the spring, I was looking towards the season and saying, I think you could worry a little bit about Hudson Mason based on what we saw near the end of last year, his pocket presence, his footwork. But I think the spring should have left you a little more encouraged. No interceptions in 3 scrimmages. Just that gap between him and Bowden and Ramsey was huge. I mean, am I looking too much into spring to say that Hudson Mason...
I agree with you. I never was that down on him off the end of last season.
Now you say that.
Well, no, I mean...
No, I'm kidding.
In the Gator Bowl, he threw for 300-something yards. That's a wet field. He's got a bunch of... He didn't have healthy receivers at the end of the year, just like Aaron Murray didn't for a lot of the season. So I think Georgia's going to be fine at quarterback. I've never really believed that was a concern with Hudson Mason. Now, he's just so experienced. He knows the offense. So many of what they could do, just running the system as sophisticated as they wanted to run it when they ran it with Murray, they're going to be able to do the same thing.
I think he was thrown into it when he didn't expect it last year, and he got 2.5 games of what's going to turn out to be valuable experience.
He didn't play bad.
Yeah, and he did play well, but he was able to use what he was unsure of, what got exposed a little bit there, and I think he kind of took care of it.
And I think that is a big deal. Those 2 starts are going to be real big for him.
I think Georgia's fine there. I think they're fine. I think they're fine in general on offense if they're healthy. That leaves the defense. Don't put too much stock in the G-Day game, because Jeremy Pruitt did not care. He was not trying to win that game like Todd Grantham was last year. He was, once again, just evaluating. So in terms of the spring in general, I don't think much was advanced other than Jeremy Pruitt kind of establishing himself and doing some evaluating of the personnel he has.
Here's the thing: is going into and like you say, I think going into this spring, the whole idea was they were going to keep things pretty simple so he could evaluate and kind of get a better idea who the guys were they're going to coach as the top guys. I don't think they were able to do that. I don't think they were able to distinguish, at least in some areas of the defense, who those guys are.
And by in some areas of the defense, we mean the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, linebacker's pretty solid. D-line, you might not know who the starting group is, but that's because it's close. You know, there's three.
Yeah, I mean, even Ray Drew, who seemed to take this big precipitous drop, Tracy Rocker the other day said he's going to be.
They go 6, 7, 8 deep on that line.
And they did that last year.
That can play.
The secondary did not advance other than
no.
Damian Swan is, you can pretty much pencil him in, which isn't a surprise. Maybe Corey Moore at safety, but I don't feel too confident about that.
Secondary's a mess. Yeah. Secondary was a mess last year. It's a mess now, and they're still kind of sorting through it. And I'll say, Aaron Davis, I'm sure had a good spring and has a chance to be a very good football player. But this is a guy who isn't just a walk-on, but he hasn't been on campus a calendar year yet. He was a true freshman last season. So you see that guy, and he's starting ahead of guys who played in the SEC and made starts against big opponents last year. When he's ahead of those guys at the end of spring, that's a red flag.
That's a great point. This isn't Connor Norman starting as a junior or senior or some of the other. And this program has started walk-ons before, but they're not often redshirt freshmen.
Well, and it's at this point too. It's a message to the guys who are coming back, and I'm sure Aaron Davis did play well, and I think he does have a chance to play.
He's got some credentials. Before the ACL, we're not going to break down every player in the secondary, but it is an example.
But if anyone would have ever thought he would have been starting at GD, well, no. I mean,
I didn't know who he was before. He was on the team last fall, and I didn't really.
And I'm pretty up on that kind of thing, and I had to look to see if he was on the team. That was.
He wasn't even the walk-on in the secondary that you thought they might throw out there. It was the kid that transferred from
one from Oregon.
Yeah, I'm getting a phone call right now during the filming of the show.
Disrespect.
I'll take that later. But Gentry, you go ahead and talk because I was sorting through what I have to tell this person who just called.
Well, no, I just think that
it's a travel agent, by the way.
I think that there's a lot of. Yeah. Where are you going? Bali?
I'm going to Germany for the World Cup. No, I'm going to Brazil for the World Cup.
If you're going to Germany for the World Cup, then
that's probably what my travel agent's going to tell me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now I think that threw us both up. But I think that the secondary as a whole is there's a lot still to be settled there. I think what you saw, the defense as a whole, but especially the secondary, what you saw in G-Day is going to look a lot different in the fall. Maybe somebody can step up and seize those spots. I think they'd love to see Trey Matthews do it if he's able to be out there.
Yeah, he's got to be out there. He's got to be dependable, and he's not at this point.
And again, we've talked about before. I think one of the better, if there was a real positive aspect to this spring on that side of in this secondary, it was J.J. Green, who I thought came over and did pretty well at that star position.
But he's a little bit like a walk-on coming over and having that much of an impact. A guy that was the second leading rusher last year comes over to defense,
and you'd rather have him there than some guys who played last year. Yeah, I mean it is a little concerning. I think,
but I don't know that it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think this is the way Jeremy Pruitt wanted it this spring. They're not playing anybody Saturday. They're not playing anybody till when is the date of that game? August 31st, something, whatever. So he's doing the old Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick thing of breaking them down before he builds them back up. I don't think he's going to be saying the week of the Clemson game, we don't have anybody, we all stink. By then, he's going to have a group that he feels confident in, and he's going to be telling them, I have confidence in him.
They just might be guys who aren't on campus yet. And I think there are several coming in that class. Malcolm Parrish.
Shaddle Fentang, am I pronouncing that right?
I think so.
Probably need to make sure I'm right on that. And who knows?
A couple others were in that class too that Pruitt identified and signed late, under the radar guys. So I think you don't know what you're going to get there. And really, the D-line's still got to sort through what their lineup looks like. Linebacker does look pretty solid.
Yeah.
Out of all those, I think that's an experienced bunch.
The two new assistants that coach linebackers they seem to agree with the previous staff on who the best guys. Although Davin Bellamy made a big move. He's a guy that, and here's the difference between this staff and the former staff, is a guy like Davin Bellamy is now going to play.
And he really is in the exact same position he was last year. He was kind of that next guy. because they liked him. He just, they ended up
never
redshirting
played,
him.
so redshirt. And then Lorenzo Carter's coming in. He's got that edge rusher spot. It'd probably be with
Let me ask you, one of the more interesting things I thought, and I'll ask you about this. Pruitt made the point when we talked with him yesterday that basically
It's Thursday. No, wait, we talked on Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right. We're tape delaying this.
It wasn't even yesterday when we were taping it, but it all.
It does. It's late in the spring, but
when you have young kids.
But he makes the point that he thinks the defense is out of shape. Basically,
Yes.
he thinks they're overweight. That they need to get in better condition. What do you make of that? It's pretty candid comments there, I thought.
Yeah, Pruitt doesn't talk as long as Grantham, but when he says stuff, it's kind of direct and to the point, and he's not really BSing much.
A little like Bobo on that.
Yeah, well, it's no wonder they're a lot closer than Bobo and Grantham were. And Pruitt says and we all wrote it. It's in a reaction to the way the game is going that you need guys to be lighter and be able to get on and off the field.
And I don't think anybody that watched that defense could possibly say they were fast enough. They weren't fast enough.
No.
They absolutely need to play faster this year. And I think a lot of that last year you attribute to unfamiliarity in the system, like they're hesitating, they're thinking too much. And there might have been some of that, but
well, Pruitt's also simplifying things too. That's the other. That was kind of the first thing that we started out with the spring, is saying that the major changes making. And then the second one is now the getting lighter.
Well, and I've said before, and I remember talking to Michael Bruntz, who works with our Nebraska side after the Gator Bowl, and he was just kind of giving his opinion. It was interesting because he had seen Georgia play a year before and then a year later, and we were kind of comparing what we saw at each team. And he said that on Georgia's defense, he said no one flashed.
Yeah.
They kind of let teams come at them. They didn't.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
I think there was a little bit of a talent thing going on there too. I go back, and we need to wrap this up soon, but I go back to a conversation that I had with somebody around the team before last year. Kind of sounded a warning about overrating the defense too much and putting expectations too high. They said, we don't have a Jarvis Jones or an Alec Ogletree flying around out there. And they're still not this year, but what they're hoping is that guys like Jordan Jenkins, Leonard Floyd are going to make that move. A guy like Rameek Wilson, Marlo Herrera, maybe a defensive back will step up into that role. But, that's a whole conversation for the preseason. We're going to have a lot of these shows in the preseason, and then over the summer, of course, we're going to have our World Cup breakdowns. I think the U.S. is going to go a long way as long as we're not in the same division as Ghana.
Oops.
Are we in the same?
Whoops. And Germany, by that, for that matter. I want a video from you of actually being in Germany during the World Cup when the U.S. plays Germany.
Yeah. That's a column for another day.
They tend to care about it over there. I think
a little bit.
A pretty big deal.
A little bit. Luckily, the U.S. did the right thing and hired a German as its coach. So we know all, I'd say he knows where all the bodies are buried. That's not a great joke for Germany. All right. I'm in trouble with the wife after that one. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you soon.